guys, I just finished reading this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport, and the whole premise of this book is don't follow your passion. And as I was reading it, trying to understand a little bit more of the argument, I came to the conclusion that it is very good advice to not follow your passion, and you should be learning AI instead. Now, obviously that sounds really broad, really vague, and really ambitious, but I'm gonna break down the key insights that I had while reading this book, and hopefully this argument makes sense at the end of the video for you as well. So to start us off, the whole premise of this book is that following your passion is bad advice, and there's three main reasons why following your passion is bad advice. First, passion is rare. A study that was conducted in 2002 found out that 84% of students identified that they had a passion, but only 4% of those students actually had a passion that was related to work. So that means that 96% of students had passions related to hobbies like skiing, painting, photographs, and everything in between. The second point talks about how passion takes time. And in this point, Newport talks about this study done by this Yale professor that found out that people who were more passionate about their work and happier about their work were people that were in the job for the longest period of time. And then he ties that into point number 3, which is passion is actually a side effect of mastery, which is really interesting because he goes into this motivational theory called self-determination theory that is exactly what science has been looking at in the past few years. And essentially, this theory says that what makes great work and what makes people be happy and motivated to be in their job is a combination of 3 different factors, which are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Essentially, autonomy is having the feeling that you have control over your work. Competence is having the feeling that you're doing your work really well, and relatedness has to do with actually liking the people in your job. So the whole premise of this book is to go against the idea that if you do work you love, you won't work a single day in your life. And essentially, he's talking about how following your passion is actually dangerous and really complicated. So the conclusion of the first part of the book is that we believe that following your passion is actually good advice, and it sounds really great, honestly. But in reality, science shows us there are many other things that actually lead you to being passionate, happy, and fulfilled in your job. But there's a catch. The traits that define great work are actually really rare and valuable. And then Cal goes into this idea of supply and demand, that if you want something that's really rare and valuable, you need to offer something that's really rare and valuable in return. And that's where AI actually comes in. AI, in my point of view, is rare, valuable, and it's just starting out. ChatGPT, for example, the model that popularized AI the way we see it as of right now, was just released in December of 2022. That means that we're essentially 18 months into this whole AI wave, which honestly presents itself as an insane opportunity for us. We're seeing something being developed that we know it's rare because not many people are actually taking advantage of this opportunity. Is valuable because we've all seen what AI can do for businesses, and we're just starting out, which means that over time, these models are going to get way better, and our ability to implement AI into businesses and implement AI into our general lives is going to get much better and broader. So if we start learning these skills now of learning how to use AI and build AI systems, we'll be able to cash in on that later on by actually being really good at it and then bidding for those traits that are rare and valuable, like control, autonomy, creativity, and everything in between. But then how do we actually learn those skills? Well, a good starting point is developing what Cal calls a craftsman mindset, which is essentially focusing on what value you can provide to the world instead of focusing on what value you can take from the world. And then the second part of that is just thinking about becoming so good that they can't ignore you. And the book actually outlines 5 steps that you can follow to essentially develop that craftsman mindset and learn the skills to be so good that they can't ignore you. But if you just want to get a quick start, I recommend you go to my channel over here and start watching the AI tutorials that I have available, because that's gonna move you from 0 to 1 really quickly. So let's go to the 5 habits of a craftsman. Step number 1 is you need to decide in what type of market you are in. And the book defines that there's only 2 types of markets. 1, winner take all, and 2, auction market. And using the words from the book, in a winner take all market, there's only one type of career capital available and lots of different people competing for it. An auction market, by contrast, is less structured. There are many different types of career capital, and each person might generate their own unique collection of capital. In a winner-take-all market, for example, you need to first crack the code on how people master one skill that matters. In an auction market, by contrast, you might simply emphasize rareness in the skill combinations that you create. Depending on what you're trying to build with AI, you could be in one or another market. For example, if you're just trying to get really good at building voice agents, then that's a winner-take-all market. It's one approach, one skill, and you just need to figure out how to build really good and valuable voice agents. If, for example, you're trying to implement AI into content creation, you might need to understand the basics of content creations, the intricacies of content creation, and the AI side of things. It's two different skills that you need to master to make that thing happen. And with those two skills combined, you might just need to emphasize the rareness of those two skills combined together. Now, it's really hard for you to figure out which market you're actually in. I would recommend to just assuming the premise that you're in a winner-take-all market, because that will lead you to have really narrow focus in learning something very specific and being really good at it. Which brings us to step number 2. Step number 2 is to identify the type of capital that you're looking for. If you have identified that you are in a winner-take-all market, it only matters one thing. In this context, like I said, it could be building AI voice agents for sales purposes, for example, or it could be building AI's voice agents for customer support services. But if you are in an auction type of market and you realize that you have two different skills that you need to master, for example, content creation and AI, you're going to have to work on acquiring both of those skills. Once you have defined the types of skills that you want to develop, you need to define what good means for you. So when it comes to get good, you want to set a clear goal. The book talks about an example of a guy who wanted to become a scriptwriter, and his definition of good was to be picked up by an agent. If an agent thought that his scripts were good enough for him to want to sign him, that meant that he found good. So in an AI context, I would encourage you to define good by picking one type of system that you want to learn AI with, and then work towards building the AI systems around it. So for example, in that customer support AI voice agent system, you could pick the 5 main questions that your company receives and then create an AI voice agent that can answer all of those. The definition of good for that context could just be having a minimal viable product that works. And then from that point on, we move to step 4, which is called stretch and destroy. And essentially what that means is to focus on deliberate practice, which is a term that was coined in the 90s by a professor at University of Florida, if I'm not mistaken. Here, I found a section in the book, is a Florida State University professor, Anders Ericsson, and he coined the term in the early 90s, and essentially it means activities designed typically by a teacher for the sole purpose of effectively improving specific aspects of an individual's performance. So essentially, you want to be working really hard to improve the performance of your system. And there are 2 strategies that the book brings up that you can actually start using it right now. And I started using, and I want to really see what happens in the next month to 3 months using that, which are 1, seeking feedback in every step of the way, and 2, tracking all of your hours dedicated to deliberate practice. Also, it's really important to mention here that deliberate practice does not feel easy. If you're starting to settle into a flow while doing these things, this means that it's getting easy, and you should be looking for something a little bit more challenging. That's why when you seek feedback and someone says, oh, this could be a little bit better, like this could sound a little bit more realistic, or it could answer the question a little bit better, you need to be stretching your skill out to actually be able to fulfill that request and make the system become even better at what you're trying to build, essentially. And then the last step over here is just to be patient. And they talk about the 10,000 hour rule, that to become a real master at this, you need to be patient. Obviously, this example that we were going through of just building a single system, you won't need 10,000 hours, or hopefully you won't need 10,000 hours to figure it out. But in the grand scheme of things, let's say you want to specialize in AI voice agents, 10,000 hours might be what you need. And to be honest, this whole part of the book, these 5 habits, were really what struck to me, because I was finding myself actually reaching this plateau of learning new things with AI and finding them become really easy and not really actually improve my learning that much. So I started implementing these practices, as I mentioned, of asking for feedback, and I'm more than glad to hear feedback from you guys and from the people that I'm helping as well on how I can improve these systems. And I'll reach back in a month, because I really want to do this for a month to 3 months and then figure out what the actual differences are. If it doesn't work, I'll come back and I'll say it doesn't work, and we'll go from there. Now, let's say you actually did this for 10,000 hours and you become so good that they can't ignore you. What do you actually do with all that career capital? The book says that you should start bidding for control. And essentially this means having a say on what you do and how you do it. And a lot of the examples mentioned in the book revolve around asking your boss for something. For example, you can ask for your boss for 3 months off, or you can ask to become a freelance developer instead of being working in there full time. I don't necessarily think that that's the way to go with AI, because when you're learning these automations, you actually start accidentally getting control back. Let's say, for example, that you have a task that takes 5 hours a week to complete, and you figure out a system after many hours of trial and error that takes those 5 hours down to, let's say, 30 minutes to an hour. You're essentially spending 20% of the time to do the same work that you need, freeing up those other 4 hours that you could be using for literally anything else. And in my mind, if you're delivering the same amount of work using much less input, what's the difference? You know what I mean? But let's take the examples from the book and let's assume that you do need to ask your boss for something. Let's say that you do want to get 3 months off. The book says that you're very likely to face some sort of resistance. Now, this resistance can mean one of two things. One, you're not good enough. Two, they don't want to lose you. These two things are actually what the book calls the two control traps, and there is a way to figure out in which scenario you are. And the simple way to do that is to use the law of financial viability, which essentially means if someone's willing to pay for it, it means that you have enough career capital. And if you have enough career capital, it means that you're in the second category of people just don't want to lose all the work that you've been putting in, but you also are able to do that because you have that evidence, that neutral evidence of people being able to pay for it. So there are many different ways that you can figure out if people are willing to pay, and exactly in the words from the book, in some cases, it literally means customers paying you money for a product or service. But it can also mean getting approved for a loan, receiving an outside investment, or more commonly, convincing an employer to either hire you or keep writing you paychecks. So if you figure out that people are willing to pay for it, you can just move on with your AI development and get more control into your working life. Now, the book moves forward to talk about a fourth rule, which is essentially to tie your work to a mission. And to be honest, that chapter didn't really resonate too much with me because I think I'm in a different stage of becoming so good that people can't ignore me. So the two takeaways that I had from that chapter is that once you do become so good that they can't ignore you, you'll start seeing the various spots for innovation, what the book calls the adjacent possible. And essentially this means that when you're at the cutting edge of an industry, you'll be able to spot the places where innovation is possible. And then once you find those spots, you'll be able to actually tie that to a mission. Essentially, like, I see that this is possible and I want to make this my mission and go down that path. Now, you don't need to create a super big goal to do that. The book says that one of the best ways to do it is just to place little bets. Essentially, pick out little projects that you can experiment with and see if that mission actually aligns with what you want to do. I feel like the people that are at that stage are the people that we see coming up with AI softwares, essentially, because they're at a point where they've understood everything that the market has to offer with all of the different AI tools, and they're like, oh, there's a gap here. I'm going to make this thing possible. And then if they're able to attach it to a personal mission, that sounds great, right? Like, that does sound like the dream. But in conclusion, this whole book talks about the importance of developing rare and valuable skills, which are exactly what AI is as of right now, and a few different tactics on how to do so. And I hope you found valuable some of the tactics that we went over, like the 5-step process, the whole idea of using deliberate practice, seeking feedback, and being intentional about the hours that you work towards something hard, because those are the main takeaways that I'm taking with me. And also, if you want to seek feedback to your builds, I've been thinking about creating a school community. Maybe by the time that this video is out, I already have the school community. So you can check out the link down below and you're going to find either a school community link, or just please let me know in the comments that that would be interesting for you, because I want to bring people together that are interested in doing the same thing. And I'd love to hear from you if that's something that you're also interested in doing. So thank you so much for watching all the way until the end. And if you want to get started and go from zero to good, I recommend you watch this video over here that's about creating AI chatbots. It's essentially one of the easiest things that you can start with, and that's a really good starting point. So go figure out how to create an AI chatbot and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in learning about AI, especially in a sales and marketing context. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.